So I'd like to welcome Richard Bell from Bell Alliance. Richard Bell is the driver behind one of the largest real estate conveyancing firms in the Lower Mainland. Welcome, Richard. Thanks for joining me.
It's my pleasure.
So, Richard, I wanted to get you in the media. We know how the media likes to embellish things, and of course, when this whole pandemic came about, I started to read about all these deals collapsing, buyers wanting to get out of the deals, banks pulling the plug on the 24th hour because people were losing jobs. What's your in the trenches view of this? Is it true? Is it not? What's your feedback?
Yeah, we haven't seen virtually any of that. Most deals are closing. I can think of in the last sort of 4 weeks, I've dealt with a few phone calls where people are really concerned about purchasing the property. And at the end of the day, one of those clients simply couldn't finance the transaction. Which they probably wouldn't have been able to finance it a year earlier either. They had a particular problem come up in their lives, which was independent of the COVID situation. So we're seeing our volumes to date this year are actually significantly higher than the volumes at the same time last year. So transactions are closing, the volumes are good. We do expect our sense is that as we head in through May and June, we are going to see a bit of a slowdown in our volumes, but we're also hearing some positive activity within the real estate industry, and we run about 30 to 60 days behind the deals that are actually being transacted today.
Right. Okay. Well, that's good to know. So now I'd like to talk a little bit about, I know how everything's changed for many businesses. What's changed in the process of how you're doing business now as opposed to what you were doing pre-COVID?
I guess what's changed is the management of constant change. So we would just obviously pre-COVID, we would be meeting with clients on a regular basis. If someone was offshore, we would send them to a notary public offshore. The COVID world changed all of that. And the biggest challenge we had was a Court of Appeal decision a number of years ago where video conferencing was not witnessing. Witnessing required physical presence. And as you and many of your viewers know, that to file documents in the land title office on a transaction, there is a witnessing that takes place on land title documents. So that piece of legislation or that court decision created a problem. A whole bunch of other problems followed from that, which was law society restrictions, provisions of within the contracts of purchase and sale requiring stat decks. So there was 4 or 5 different roadblocks for us to be able to effectively deal with clients that are going, you know what, I do not want to leave my home.
So would you say that the whole process now can be done virtually, or is that not am I misunderstanding?
Yeah, no, you're almost. And, before some of the changes that have since taken place over the last sort of 6 weeks, I would say, we actually had scenarios where we would have people park downstairs in the underground. We would go downstairs, we would slip documents through, they would hold their ID up to the window of the car, we would take a picture of that. So we found a number of creative ways around it, even going to people's homes. But step by step, and truly it's been a step-by-step process, where we had the Law Society come out with some new rulings which allowed for video conferencing. We had the Land Title Office enable us to do a video conference, and if we were acquainted with the client, then we could sign an affidavit saying that we're acquainted with that client, and those documents could be filed in the Land Title Office under that sort of strategy. Then, of course, we had, well, do the banks agree to it? And slowly but surely, most of the banks have come along to say, we recognize this is a unique moment in history. We will allow you to do a video conferencing for purposes of those documents that have to be filed in the Land Title Office. Not all the banks have got there yet, Mark, so we're pushing, we continue to push Many of them are saying, just request, we'll likely approve. But we also have a challenge with the contract of purchase and sale because it says there needs to be a statutory declaration. And again, that's creating a barrier. The good news is folks, law firms and notaries that do a lot of real estate understand that problem. So we're working around that, where we're actually getting the consent to do a video conferencing with a specific change in the affidavit material. So everyone slowly but surely has come along, and it's been the painful process of prodding the various levels of government as well as the financial institutions to enable us to work with our clients.
Right, and it's amazing how I'm seeing a lot of red tape that was initially took eons to get through now being pushed through out of necessity. It's amazing how all of a sudden now, when push comes to shove, people are moving. So the question I have for you is, do you feel moving forward, once this cloud lifts and we get back to some kind of normalcy, do you think it's going to revert back to where you were in terms of the process, or do you think anything's going to hang around?
Well, it's actually quite a controversial issue within the profession. I think it is time that we move forward with solutions that utilize technology to make life simpler for everyone. Everyone outside of a COVID world, busy lives, kids to take to sports events, all of those things. So personally, I would hope that they would continue to enable us to work in today's world and utilize today's technology, as opposed to what it was like when I started 30 years ago. It is time for this change to become permanent, quite frankly.
Right. Good to know. So, Richard, what I'm going to do is when I put this video up, I'll put your contact in there. So for anybody who doesn't understand the word conveyancing, Richard's firm, Bell Alliance, would be the law firm that you would go to if you were purchasing or selling any real estate in the Lower Mainland. Does that sound about correct, Richard?
That's a great description of it.
Right on. Well, thanks again for joining me, and that's some great information.
Okay. Thanks, Mark.